After 1995, when the peace accord was signed, this group of people that I'm calling the story shepherds were wrecked. They were traumatized, they were grieving, they were had all this momentum, right? The momentum of experience can continue past its supposed closure. We don't just suddenly say, okay, there's peace now, everything's good. I think we could compare to any war. There needs to be a system in place for healing and repair. We can't just say, oh, the war's over, pick up your stuff and go home. And the wounds of the conflict ran very, very deeply, and still do, and incredibly deeply, in Northern Ireland and beyond. A woman named Taya Sepinuk runs an organization called Theatre of Witness, and she came to Derry, which is the city where Bloody Sunday happened, and she invited people who had been termed actors, who were actors in the conflict, and she listened to each one-on-one, tell her story, his story, their story. And then she worked with each person individually and created a theater piece out of the story. And doing this with these people from different factions, right? Different groups, including innocent bystanders, spouses of the killed, IRA members, paramilitary, police, and British Army. And there were many, many, many sides to this conflict. And she developed these theater pieces and then invited everybody to come and watch. And here the healing began. They saw each other's stories. They saw how the other people's stories held elements of their own. Post-traumatic stress, addiction, depression, alienation, isolation, and they bonded in that. They bonded in the vulnerability and the emotional impact of what had gone on. And that now had a way of overriding the idea of the enemy. And now they are all best friends. And I'm flying them over here to share their stories with us and their videotaped theater pieces. I have never been so moved, inspired, educated, transformed by one single event as I was by listening to this group. And there are many layers to why I feel that way. But at the heart of it, at the very, very heart of it, is the knowledge that they've been here. They have been where we in America are right now. And they know what comes of this. They know what comes of the behaviors that it is very easy to fall into. From our language, how we dehumanize our perceived enemies, calling them things other than human. I see that happening from the other side, I've been called ridiculous names that I had to Google to find out what it is, and even then it wasn't impressive at all. So dehumanizing language, our closing up, right? Closing up our hearts to others because of maybe a bumper sticker they have on their truck. And believe me, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. And but it is still a pattern, right? It is a pattern from other areas of history, other situations, other groups. There are other corollaries at work right now that can be resolved. They can. There are ways. Northern Ireland was a war zone for so long that my Irish grandmother from Belfast lamented it, but she always said she could never go back. And she never talked about it either. It was like all of Ireland and Northern Ireland didn't exist, which I think is very much a common story for those of us who have grandparents of the war generations. Trauma wasn't a word, so you just didn't say anything.